Tonight, how the Attorney General wants to license police officers.
And do you know this man? Police are searching for the suspect who smashed their window.
Plus, what we're learning about 2 new COVID-19 deaths in Peoria County. This is 25 News at 10.
From WEEK, your home team. This is 25 News at 10.
Despite 2 new deaths in Peoria, the Tri-County area as well as the state continues to see a decline in the severity of COVID-19. Good Saturday evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Lopez.
And I'm Amber Kriska. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. But is that enough to move to phase 4, or could protests cause a spike in cases and delay that transition? Kyle Beachy explains in tonight's top story.
Well, it's been just over 1 week since the Tri-County area, Peoria County on one side of the river and Tazewell and Woodford County on this side of the river, entered into phase 3 of the Restore Illinois plan. But what's it going to take to get to phase 4, and how long until we get there? Daily COVID-19 briefings are done, and Peoria City County Health Administrator Monica Hendrickson says that means progress.
I think it's a good sign that we are progressing through the reopening phase.
Bloomington police are looking for the person who smashed the window of a squad car during an otherwise peaceful protest. Take a look at this video right here. They've released this video from May 31st in the hopes that someone will recognize the man involved. Bloomington PD they were blocking traffic and providing security for a protest near North Madison and West Washington streets when it happened. Here's a closer look at the man they are looking for. Crime Stoppers is offering up to $1,000 if you can identify this man and it leads to an arrest. City leaders in Bloomington say they are listening to protesters demanding the end of systematic racism in law enforcement. During a virtual city council meeting tonight, all members spoke on possible changes that could be made. But council member Jen Carrillo was the only one who called for a reduction in police funding, saying leaders need to consider if the justice system was, quote, built on bad principle and needs to be completely and radically reimagined.
And I like to think of myself as an abolitionist. And while that sounds really radical, I actually think it's very, very possible.
All city council members who spoke tonight call for some sort of change in policing.
Mourners gathered in Houston today to pay their respects to George Floyd, whose death at the hands of police May 25th has inspired protests around the world. Nadia Romero shows us now how activism is turning to action.
George Floyd is making us strong.
Thousands turned out in Houston Monday to pay their respects to George Floyd. His death in the custody of Minneapolis police drawing attention to racial inequality and police brutality in America.
We declare, Lord, that it's time for change, time for justice.
Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul wants to license the police. Illinois does have a certification process now, but officers can only be decertified if they're convicted of a Class 4 felony. Raoul says there are many cases where officers may be fired and then move on to work for a different department without issue. The Attorney General says a licensing process would allow for misconduct reviews and consideration for revoking a license.
They often have their hands tied by collective bargaining agreements, by other measures that are in the law that makes it difficult for them to deal with bad apples.
Raoul believes that his plan could help remove cops like Derek Chauvin in Minnesota, who had 18 complaints filed against him before he was charged in the murder of George Floyd.
There's a group effort to take the outrage over police custody death and channel it in the Twin Cities. This rally took place today in front of the Bloomington Center for Performing Arts. The NAACP there, not in our town, McLean County Sheriff's Office, Bloomington Police, and the Illinois State University Police, they all came together to support the Black Lives Matter movement. An estimated 100 people took part. Some of the people there told us they'd experienced racism in the Twin Cities.
Almost like they're rejecting what the world was and seeing a different world, and that gives me more hope than anything. And it's not even just these matters. They're open to the environment, to everything. Their energy is very positive for this movement.
And the rally ended with 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence, the length of time that a police officer could be seen in video with his knee on George Floyd's neck before he died May 25th. Peoria's Black Justice Project is calling for Peoria police to release evidence in recent officer-involved shootings. They are organizing a protest for tomorrow, beginning at 5 in the evening outside the Peoria Police Station. The group wants PPD to release all complaints registered against any officers involved in any police-involved deaths in the last 3 years.
Support for the Black Lives Matter movement continues to grow among professional athletes, both in the U.S. and overseas. Here's what we're learning. This past weekend brought together another wave of peaceful protests and marches with athletes right there in the mix. In fact, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell apologized for the way the league leaders previously dealt with protests. Derek Booth of Peoria's Public Schools is watching those developments closely and sees this as a positive way to inspire younger generations to speak out against social injustice.
And so when they now see professional athletes also being involved in social justice issues, it also communicates to them the responsibility is more than just on the court. Or like you look at a Roger Goodell, the move that he made and statements that he made yesterday, I thought were monumental. It's okay to be a powerful person and say, I'm sorry, we got it wrong. We were wrong. We didn't listen. And I am going to allow for peaceful protest.
Booth hopes this is just the start to more dialogue regarding racial issues. And tomorrow, Bradley University's athletic department plans to march from campus to the Civic Center at 6 p.m. The arguments are done, and now it's up to the jury to decide whether Christopher Harrison is guilty of fatally shooting 2 men who tried to rob him 2 years ago. In closing arguments on Friday, prosecutor Jeff Horv described Christopher Harrison as a proud and callous drug dealer. The prosecutor said that Harrison could have done a lot of things, but instead chose to chase the men down and shoot them 21 times, emptying an entire magazine of clips into their backs. But defense attorney Kevin Sanborn argued it's about self-defense and that his client was legally defending the property that the 2 victims were there trying to steal from him.
Smoke them. Yes, he did. That's first-degree murder.
Your freedom allows you to defend yourself and your property.
The jury deliberated for a little over an hour on Friday before breaking for the weekend. They will resume, though, at 9 a.m. on Monday.
Tonight marks the 4th anniversary of one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. Caitlin Pearson shows us how those lives are being honored in McLean County.
On this day in 2016, 49 people were killed and 50 others injured when a man opened fire at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Now, while Pride Month is typically filled with celebration, many who gathered here in Bloomington tonight say remembering the hurt is just as important. For Lori Bell, the painful memories of the Pulse nightclub shooting come back year after year.
This is our Pulse. And so when that happened, in Orlando, there isn't a person who's LGBT or a parent or a family member or a friend or a loved one who just didn't feel it in our heart and soul.
Hearts were drawn and signs handed out with the names of those who lost their life. 49 people stood with those names, a visual representation of what that tragedy would look like in the McLean County's only LGBTQ+ establishment, the Bistro. Bell says it's a reminder to continue to fight for change as just
Caitlin, thank you. Student athletes are in a unique position this summer to learn about race relations and mass demonstrations in real time. Pablo Iglesias shows us how they're being advised by the leaders who've come before them.
The stand against injustice has impacted sports globally, nationally, and now
enough is enough!
Locally. Chris Reynolds is used to leading and guiding student athletes as Bradley University's athletic director. But now he's doing his part to help elevate their voices after he saw players and other students organize Tuesday's peaceful protest.
What I love about young people, they don't want to wait for anything. They say, why are we waiting? Now is the accepted time. Let's do something today.
They said they wanted to do this. And what our student athletes want to do, we're going to be locked arm in arm with them. 1,000%.
Pablo, thank you. With Phase 3 of Restore Illinois, restaurants have reopened their doors to outdoor dining for the first time in months, and we saw some of this for ourselves last night, Amber. It's packed out there.
Yeah, it was packed. People were excited to get out and about. It was great to see. So Luke is going out to eat too, and he takes us to Normal's Distill Restaurant and Brew Works for this week's You Gotta Eat.
Now that we're finally allowed to physically go to restaurants, let's try Distill. Now, of course, we're eating outside today. Executive Chef here, MJ Gibson, says it's a welcome change to kind of be back to normal.
It has been an awesome experience to have guests come out each and every day and enjoy the patio.
But don't worry, social distancing and cleanliness is still top priority at all restaurants like this as they begin to reopen their doors. Now, once you get to your table, you can finally take that mask off. Thank goodness, it was starting to get a little stuffy in that thing. Oh, what's that? How's the food? Well, hang on,
And Distill is open 7 days a week. Luke says with every purchase of the banana cream pie, a portion of the proceeds go to the Nelson Memorial Fund, providing financial assistance to local nonprofit charities. That banana cream pie sounds good.
Oh man, it looked fantastic too.
Well, coming next on 25 News, we are getting ready for a 1-2 weather punch starting tomorrow.
This as crews start to remove protections from our last severe weather threat. Chuck will tell you what's next after the break.